The three assessments that I gave Henry throughout our time together were basically the running record with the comprehension, conversation, fluency chart, the Maze test, and the vocabulary and context test. The latter two are my sub-assessments. So for the running record, I gave him a Fountas and Pinnell Level Y nonfiction text. It was difficult to determine his Fountas and Pinnell reading level because my middle school, as well as middle schools as a whole, don't really tend to use Fountas and Pinnell to assess reading levels. I even asked my mentor teacher about this, and he said that basically they don't use Fountas and Pinnell, but the elementary schools in their district do. So I settled on a level Y text because his MAPS scores for reading were low, so I figured that would put him at like a lower reading level for 8th grade. I was pleasantly surprised to find that he only made 4 errors when he read. He also self-corrected twice, which, as we know, don't count as errors. It put him at a 98% accuracy rate, which is the independent level. I noticed that his errors either came for like looking at the first 2 letters, like for instance, he read the instead of this, or it came from his inability to decode 3 or 4 syllable words. Like for instance, he wasn't able to read experimentation, which is expected for middle school students at that age. Like they don't tend to be able to decode those words right away, no matter if they receive tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 instruction. His comprehension conversation, on the other hand, told a rather different story. I noticed that he scored 1s across the board, which means within the text he got a 1 and beyond the text and about the text. I noticed that when I was talking to him about what he read, he only focused on like a handful of details rather than the big picture. Like for instance, something that I asked him was, "What did you learn about the International Space Station?" He said, "It was getting built in space. It's a big station, space shuttles to hold them, and it's still in construction." But when I asked him about how does the author describe the ISS, he said space station will be big and people can bring their space shuttles there. He focused a lot on space shuttles, the whole space station, and basically it's still being built. So his whole score was a 3, which is an unsatisfactory level. The 6 dimensions fluency rubric, on the other hand, he got a pretty decent score on. He had pretty good pausing, decent phrasing and rate, but his stress and intonation were low. He read pretty monotone, but also I consider the fact that he doesn't really like reading, so it may have just been him trying to get the whole thing over and done with. So for my subtests, I basically just wanted to test what specifically with comprehension he was struggling with. For instance, comprehension is more than just trying to retell the text. So the first subtest I gave him was the Maze assessment. So I gave him the 8th grade level 1. I actually took him outside of the classroom in the hallway and not in our usual testing place, and I gave it to him and told him to do it. And out of the 50 questions, he got 5 wrong in the wrong context, which put him at a 90%. Basically, it suggests that comprehension and context is at an instructional level for him. It's not a super big struggle, but he could receive instruction in it. And as for my second subtest, I was kind of struggling on what to give him because, he didn't need a test in phonemic awareness or phonics or fluency. I was lost on what to do. So I got some advice from my professor, and she suggested the vocabulary in context. So I gave him 5 words. One of them was tier 1. I didn't want to focus too much on tier 1. 2 of them were tier 2 and 2 of them were tier 3. And his total score was a 6, which is unsatisfactory for that level. I noticed that he would either give a definition that was relatively close to the definition that the sheet was asking for, like for instance, destination. The full definition was like places of intended arrival. He just said places. Or he gave like a similar like a very simple definition of the word, like for instance, deteriorate. He said the definition wanted was like to worsen condition or disintegrate. He said lose. Or he focused too much on the context of the text. Like for example, components, the definition wanted was like part of piece or pieces of something, and he said all the stuff that a spaceship needs, because he was thinking about our text instead of just in general. As I said before, it was like to determine his comprehension struggles, and that was when I figured out he struggled with main idea and details. So for the testing situation environment, I could really only test him on Thursdays because Tuesdays, the other day that I'm there, are always shortened days, and it would have been difficult to try to squeeze in some time there. So every Thursday I would give him like at least one of the assessments to do. Sometimes I had to retest if I felt like I didn't administer it well enough. The first time I assessed him, it was actually during the advisory period. He also has my mentor teacher for advisory, so it gave me some extra time to test him, but not much. But the remaining of the time I tested him in the classroom, but at like a separate table where my mentor teacher tends to do tier 2 intervention over there. And it was a pretty calm place to test, like relatively far away from the students, but not like too far away to the point where he felt like he was singled out. And also I would try to do them during independent work time where there wasn't a lot of instruction going on. So for student strengths, I found that he demonstrates proficiency in phonics and phonemic awareness. It's not a struggle of his. He was able to sound out many sight words, many vocabulary words. He just basically wasn't able to decode some words. He could also attempt to sound out words I didn't know. Like I noticed that he actively tried to sound out words like facility, even though he didn't get them right. Some kids would just straight up try to skip over them. And he also demonstrates adequate fluency for someone at his age level. Like he had good pausing and integration and things like that. But his needs, however, I noticed that his biggest struggle was comprehension, more specifically main idea and details. Like he would focus on only a handful of details and not the bigger picture or other details. And he also sometimes struggles to pick out the appropriate word to use in context. Like for instance, in the maze assessment, he put chuckle instead of glimpse, which isn't the right word to use in the context. And also he tends to focus too much on one context when determining vocabulary definitions, or just give like a simple definition of the word. As I said before, with like components, with him saying that it's all the things that a spaceship needs rather than something general, or a simple definition of the word like durable, able to last, he said good material. Some implications for classroom texts are basically I would provide Henry with explicit instruction on how to find the main idea, including strategies that he can use and also model comprehension strategies with Henry, such as like developing background knowledge and making connections to information, and also model annotating nonfiction text and predicting fiction text, which is a pretty big strategy to use in middle school when reading both nonfiction text and fiction text.